I think has helped me to become a better writer because I've been able to finish things and then move on and keep doing new things. I've done a lot more because I've been willing to.
Welcome back to the Wax Quill Podcast. Woohoo!
All right, my friends, today I'm going to talk about 10 things that I've learned from the authors that I've interviewed. So let's go to number one. Number one, it's okay to take a break from writing. Now, this one was hard for me to swallow. I didn't agree with Emmy Hansen, the one who I interviewed and got this advice from at first, because I always think that, oh, if I'm going to write a book, I have to just stick to it bit by bit by bit, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. So, it was hard for me to swallow the fact that she said, I took a break for a few months. And I thought, oh, but you missed so much writing time. However, I then decided to take a break myself. And it turns out she was right. I really needed that because I just got all my creative juices back at full capacity. And I was able to focus on my story and enjoy writing again. Whereas before, I was just kind of going through the motions. Now, I will say that I think you get more done and you create better habits if you're doing things regularly rather than, oh, I feel like writing. I'm going to sit down and write. And then you don't write for months because you just don't feel like it, which is fine if you don't have the goal of finishing a book in a certain amount of time. But if you're trying to get into a writing habit and be able to publish books consistently, then you need to be consistently writing because that just makes sense. Consistent writing, consistent books finished. But if you're burnt out, then you're not going to be very consistent and it's going to become a chore and you're going to probably give up on writing because you're just not enjoying it anymore. So I think there's a balance there. Yeah. With that said, I do stick to my stance when saying that beginner writers who really want to write a book but are struggling with it, write every day. It can be one sentence. Write just a little bit. Don't try to write for 3 hours every day. That's a lot. Maybe even don't even try to write for an hour a day if you're really busy. Maybe say 10 minutes. Make it very manageable. I have a free ebook for that. Click on the link. It's below. It's free. It's about how to write a book. Easy. Setting manageable goals. Okay, let's move on to number two. I already talked enough about this one. From my interviews with Jalen Tellis, second drafting isn't as scary as first drafting. Those are my words. I have a bad habit of writing a lot of books and then not going back and editing them because I think, oh, that book was awful. Maybe I'll just start again and write a better book and then I'll be able to edit that book. And I also had this plan of having lots of first drafts that I could just then pick one, enter it into a second draft, and slowly move through all these first drafts and eventually have a bunch of finished novels just ready to pump out and publish. But I haven't gone back to edit any of them. So, yeah, I'm just going to say if you're afraid of starting your second draft or going back to edit things like I really have been, it's going to be okay. It's actually a lot more enjoyable than first drafting. It's a lot more fun. So, thank you, Jalen, for that because I needed to hear that. Number 3, if you enjoy making your illustrations when you're illustrating a book, then people will enjoy looking at them. I learned this from my sister, Angie, the Pale Horse Farrier. So she went to school to be an illustrator, and I'm currently trying to illustrate my children's book, my little picture book, that I'm going through the motions to get published. I am not an artist, or I wasn't. I guess now I can say I am. But Angie was a big force, a big advocate for me learning how to illustrate and just trying it. And I've had a hard time with my illustrations because I think, oh, this one's kind of weird. Are people even gonna like it? Or maybe I should make it less bizarre, less pictures, less vibrant, maybe just kind of make it more subtle. And in talking to her in our interview, I think I need to just make my illustrations the way I want them to be. And then when the right person likes them, they'll really like them instead of just a bunch of mediocre, should I say mediocre people liking them, or a lots of people liking them in an average volume of likeness, then a few people instead will love them, instead of having lots of likes, having a few loves. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I learned from Angie. Moving on. Okay, so this is from my interview with the professional illustrator, Kayana DeRocher. And she gave me the advice, which I really appreciated, that you don't have to be a professional in order to illustrate your book. And what I mean by that isn't that, oh, yeah, you can have crappy drawings and publish them. That's not what she said. She encouraged me because I showed her some of my little first scratchy drawings, and they were horrible. I've gotten a lot better, but they were really, really bad. And you can see them, link below to that interview. But she was very encouraging and just gave some advice and she was just very animated. Like, oh, yeah, you can totally do this. Just keep going, keep practicing. Maybe do this and this and this, change the shape a little bit like this. And yeah, you got this. And it made me feel like, oh, yeah, maybe it's not such a, what's the phrase, closed gate community. Like maybe normal people can illustrate their own books. And that was very refreshing. And I needed that. Moving on. This is from my interview with Willa Lane. She told me that being infused with imposter syndrome and still writing is completely normal, that published authors still feel a lot of imposter syndrome. So, all of you who are like, oh, I would write, but I'm not as good as all the people on Instagram and all these other books I read, welcome to the club. Every single person who's been writing a book, except for crazy narcissists who still manage to do it, have a lot of imposter syndrome. You're doing great. You can check off the first step in becoming a published author. Congratulations. So it's normal. It's okay. You can write your book. It's going to be great. Keep writing. Moving on. This is from my interview with Allison Hymas. Working with others can make your book better and isn't cheating. So Allison Hymas is a traditionally published middle grade author. Sorry, she's a middle grade author. And she talked to me about, the editing process and the book cover process. And I was concerned, this was one of my first interviews, and I was concerned that if you get something traditionally published, that they take the book away from you and that you don't have any decision power in the cover, in any of the changes that they want, in the format, this and that, in the title. And she said, you know what, I that's kind of true because a lot of people are now involved, but the input from other people makes your book actually a lot better, which I was kind of surprised about. So I thought that was interesting, and it made me more willing to give my book a chance at traditional publishing. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't even queried it yet, but I have the query letter written. Moving on. Check out that below. If you can overcome your own criticisms, then you'll be able to overcome outside criticism as well. And this is from award-winning poet Ashley Farmer. She was also one of my first interviews. She was so kind. And she just was very down to earth in the advice she gave. So she's written a few books and has had a lot of self-doubt, but she's pushed forward. She's won awards and she keeps writing. And she just had such a calm perspective about, you are your own worst critic. And if you can overcome yourself, and if you can overcome your own objections, your own doubts, then it's going to be much easier to dismiss the criticisms of others. And you can just keep writing and keep working on it. So I thought that was very good advice and very interesting advice. So that's from Ashley Farmer. Now, the first stranger that I interviewed, Sean Prentice, he's a professor of writing and he wrote a lot of cool things. He's also a poet. And he said, good writers write poorly most of the time, which I thought was crazy. Isn't that crazy? Why are we doing it? If all our writing is awful, why are we working so hard to write? But he's very, and I disagreed with this at the time, but I think I agree with it more now. He's very serious about the concept of anyone who wants to write is a writer. And whereas I was like, no, if you want to be a writer, you have to be writing consistently and turning out books and stuff. Not anyone can do it. It's hard, but he's a lot more down to earth and a lot more realistic about it, and he has a lot more experience. So I'll cede to him there. Um, if you want to write a book, if you want to write, then you are a writer, is from him. And it's normal to write poorly most of the time. So that was a good lesson from Sean Prentice. And then this is the advice from my brother, who has written and published books, self published while he was deployed. And he said, shoot for B plus quality. And that has been a big help to me, especially with this podcast. I don't know if you guys have seen my earlier videos, but I didn't know anything about sound setup or cameras or lighting or green screens or staring at the camera or anything at all. I'm still not very good, but it's better. So I haven't, because he said that early on, it's been in my head for a long time in this whole podcasting process. And I've been able to let go, not only in my writing, not in my illustrations, but also here, um, of the idea that, oh, it has to be perfect. I have to perfectly edit out any of those gaps. I have to make the intro perfect. I have to make the text perfectly timed. The copy in this has to be perfect, blah, 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 blah. The thumbnails have to be perfect. Still working on that. But now I shoot for B plus quality. And once I think, oh, you know what, this is good enough, I would get a B plus on this. And I publish it and it's done. So I don't know. I think it's helped me to become a better writer because I've been able to finish things and then move on and keep doing new things. I've done a lot more because I've been willing to say the product is finished at B plus instead of focusing and obsessing over it until it's at an A quality. So that's been a big help. And I stick to that 100%. B plus quality, aim for B plus quality, and then move on. The last piece of advice is from an interview that I had with my good friend, an actress, Judith. And the advice I gained from that is there's a lot of sweat and laughs in art creation. That one's a bit of a joke because she tells a story of how she was doing Shrek and she was the ogress princess, right? She was Fiona as the ogress. And then she and Shrek had these fake plastic noses, right? Because they're ogres. And with the lights and all the costumes, you get really sweaty. And if you have this big, like, plastic case over your nose, you sweat a lot. So they were, it was so gross. Oh, it was so gross. They go in for that final kiss, and Shrek has been on stage the whole time. And it, like, they went too close too fast, and all the sweat like squirted out. That is so gross. Oh, it's disgusting, but it was really funny. And I think that applies to writing because a lot of things are cringy and a lot of things are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I don't want to share that with anyone. But you still wrote it and it's done and you can fix it in the next draft. You can leave it how it is for now. It's okay for it to be gross and nasty. Just get it done. That's part of the art process. It's part of art creation. It's okay to be gross. Not everything is pretty in art. So, this is what I've learned. Hope you enjoyed this. Now go and write your book. Stop wasting time. Stop watching videos. Go write. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Bye.